Once you've downloaded and set up your Symfony project, the next thing you'll need to do is some configuration to tell your Symfony application how it's going to respond to requests. That is, we're going to tell it which controller to access. The way that you package your code in Symfony is using bundles. So we're going to create our own bundle, and inside of there will be our new controller. When you want to create a new bundle, there's a couple ways you can do it. One is you can create each thing individually by creating your own directory with your own controllers directory and your own controller PHP and do everything manually. Another way to do it is using the PHP app console to generate it. If you go into your Symfony directory that you downloaded into your PHP web root, you can simply type php app/console. So this will run the console command line interface application that's in the app directory in your Symfony install and specify generate::bundle, and this will generate the bundle for you. You can optionally pass some parameters. In this case, I'm going to set up a namespace, and I'm going to call it Acme Bundle Join Bundle. You can call it whatever you want. Acme is the default package space that they use in the demos, so I'm just going to go ahead and use that, and I'm calling it Join Bundle because this application is to allow users to join our email list. When you're done, go ahead and hit Enter. And you can see it loads the bundle generator, and it'll give you some information about what you're doing, and then it will start to walk you through a wizard. The bundle namespace, you can see in the square braces, is defaulting to what I entered, which is how it should behave. So if I hit Enter, it will use the default value. Again, you can use these default values at will. The bundle name is just fine as Acme Join Bundle. That's what it'll be referred to from within the application. We do want to write it into the source directory of our Symfony install. The configuration format, we're going to use YML instead of annotation. Do we want to generate the whole directory structure? We're going to go ahead and do that just so you can see. Basically, it's going to create a copy of some of the demo controller information and put it in there. Now it's going to make sure that you've entered everything correctly. You can go ahead and confirm that. Then it will ask you a couple of options. Is one, do you want to update the kernel? And yes, we do. The kernel essentially loads all these bundles into the application. Let's go ahead and do that so we don't have to mess around with it. And then do we want to update the routing? And I'm going to say no, we don't, because I'm going to go and show you how to do that because it's an important thing to learn inside of Symfony. So it's warning me and telling me that the routing's not configured. But let's go ahead and go into our text editor. And if you look down below inside of the Acme directory, you can see it's created this bundle, join bundle file. Let's go ahead and open this up a little more. And inside of this directory, you can see I have a controller, and my default controller is set up here. Notice it has one single action, index action, that takes a name property and is going to point to this something here to do some rendering. And what this is this is pointing to the default directory for the views, and it's going in there and grabbing index.html.twig. And that's located down here inside the resources directory. Notice Twig uses this special annotation to output that variable. So let's go ahead and set up a routing for this. But before we do that, I want to show you how the demo application is set up. This is installed by default with your Symfony download. So if you go to app_dev.php in the web root of your Symfony application, your routing will always come after that. You can map this if you want to using the .htaccess file in Apache or in your web server in a different manner if you're using a different web server. But this is going to go to whatever's mapped for the demo. In this case, it's going to the demo controller. I'm going to go to the Hello World application, which is basically what our index is. The world here is the name variable. So if you wanted to change this to your own name, it would then output that information. So it's a dynamic URL routing. And if we wanted to do this for our application, we can do it in the routing.yml file. In the instance of the demo application, it's being done using annotation, so they have it all configured in that way. And if you look at the demo controller, you can see these annotations before each of these actions that configure the routing, and it's the @route annotation that specifically is doing it. So if you look, you have @route, and then hello, and then we use the name variable, and that's setting it up. We're essentially going to do the same basic thing, only we're going to use YAML. So in our routing file, we can go ahead and type in whatever you want to call it. In this case, we're just going to call it join. It's kind of like the identifier inside of the application. And then you define the pattern that is going to be parsed out when it's being routed through the Symfony application. In this case, it's going to go to /join/ and then we're going to put our pattern for our variable. Once you've entered the pattern, you'll then enter how you want the pattern to be rendered. In this instance, you're going to specify the defaults property, and it's going to be an array, and we're going to define the controller property of the array. So we start with underscore controller, and then after the colon, we can specify Acme join bundle, which is our bundle, and this is the name we created when we ran the generate bundle. Then you specify the controller, which is default, and then you specify the action in the controller you want to execute. In this case, it was the index action. So we're going to go ahead and call index. So if you look in your default controller, you can see you have the index action that takes the variable name. So this should all be rendered correctly when we go to that URL. So let's go ahead and change from the demo controller and instead specify join/our name. And you can see it simply outputs hello Drew, because it takes that variable, passes to this, and uses this render method, which then opens our default template. Since we don't actually want to use a variable, we can go ahead and erase this, and we can erase the passing of the array to the template. This will give us the opportunity to add our view when we're ready. So we can go ahead and go into the routing and erase the name value there as well. So now when we go to join, we're simply going to load the index.html.twig file, and we'll configure this to show our application when we get into the view section. So as you can see, creating an application in Symfony 2 is a matter of creating our own bundles, and our bundles are just groups of application code. We then configure routes that will direct specific URL patterns to execute methods within our controllers. Deciding when to create new bundles and controllers and routing is all up to you.